a few ways to answer this. I think that because a lot of the software that designers use at the moment is open to everybody, anyone can learn to use it. And also because I think creativity is often seen as like a fun activity, which I guess it is sometimes, but I think that both designers and clients on the other side tend to undervalue it. In my experience, it can be the case that clients don't necessarily respect the time and effort that it takes you to do something, because it's not as tangible. They often don't see your working process, that your design process happens away from them. So they find it difficult to value what you do. And I think certainly more commercial design agencies often put it in terms that are very sort of results driven, kind of like we redesigned your company and the sales went up by 20%. And do you know what I mean? They try and monitor it in a marketing sense like that to prove their own worth. But I think that creativity is valuable in and of itself. And I think design is such a transferable skill that really the way that a designer looks at any problem, whether it's graphic design or other areas, I think the way that designers are taught to think is their most valuable asset. I guess the traditional way of looking at that would be that designers are problem solvers, or a more contemporary example would be designers being working in the service design area for sort of like projects with further reach or like more societal gain or like more social impact type thing. I don't know if that makes sense. That for example, like the .gov.uk website, when that was redesigned, that's an interesting example of service design because it affects so many people and it affects the way that they access systems that are there supposed to help them and that sort of thing. So I guess to try and answer the question more briefly, if we're a commodity, then our most essential and most valuable asset would be our process. And maybe if we were to try and make that most attractive, then we need to find ways to show how that's different from style and how the style is produced as a result of our process and thinking, if that makes sense. So you can think about any problem, and the style obviously is something that makes it attractive, but it's proven that style is important and when things are more attractive, then definitely people are more likely to understand and interact with them. But maybe style can be mistaken for communication.
Yeah.
And what designers do best is to communicate well, which is separate from style, but sometimes can be style, if that makes sense. So if you were trying to think about what would be the most valuable asset that you have as a designer, I would say that you would find the skill to make clients understand the value of both and how both of them work together, because they're not you can have one without the other, but you can also have both together. They're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, so kind of like the designer build a bridge. It's the connection between the customers and the company, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's just really simple examples of like what the .gov.uk website did really well was think about, that's an example of kind of one where they the two things coexisted really well together, the process and the style. I think there's a danger with a lot of Instagram type stuff now on Pinterest and all the other things that style takes precedence over the process, and that's it's easy to see why that's such an easy win, but I don't think that's the most important asset that designers have, because as I was saying just before, anyone can kind of copy that style. And I would kind of go one step further and say that robots can do that now. Style is something that can be copied or mimicked by somebody that hasn't really thought about it. And in a lot of ways, that a lot of great designers that have great thought process, as a result, their style is really good and they get copied. Their style is copied, but the imitations are never as good because they just haven't got the process behind them, if that makes sense. I'm actually thinking about Eric Hu, American designer, and he's I think he's based in LA. And I watched an excellent talk this week that he did on It's Nice That, where he was talking about his process for rebranding the Nike nightclub, which is kind of, I think, their sort of experimental arm. And a lot of people do copy Eric Hu's style, but what I understood from his lecture and from his other works is that there's a lot of thought and process that goes into that. So when people copy him, it's never as good. It's just a poor imitation because there's just not that sort of strategy and deep thought that goes into what they do. They just sort of copy his style, and that's the best that they can, the closest they can get. I guess style is something that can easily be copied, isn't it? Whereas, you can easily copy something, but it's much better if you've got the patience and the ability to think. And that's kind of, I don't really know where that thought comes from. I guess it comes from absorbing a lot of examples and opinions and things from other people, like reading a lot, looking at a lot of different things, understanding a lot, like a wide variety of things about the world, so then that you can understand it better and you can process it better. I don't really know if there's such thing as like a course that just makes you think. I think it's everybody's individual process of how they get there.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be that your process involves lots of research, or it could be that your process involves lots of making before you find a solution. It doesn't necessarily have to be about being like academically smart, if that makes sense.